This is the third lecture in the course, The State of the United States Economy and Society. The subject of this particular lecture is workforce trends. Well, the population of the United States is aging rapidly. Millions of adults born after the Second World War have been receiving benefits under the Social Security system now for more than a decade. Millions are relatively well off. Millions of others are not. Some percentage of our seniors remain in the workforce either in their long-term full-time positions, in second or third careers, or in part-time positions taken for economic or other personal reasons. Immigration and the impact of the new restrictions on immigration are important externalities for the economy. Take a look at this chart, which looks at the labor force. As of January 2026, the U.S. labor force showed a moderating trend with a slightly lower participation rate of around 62.4%. The downward trend is driven by population demographics. Most importantly, the number of those reaching their 60s who have retired. At the other end of the age spectrum, teens and young adults are staying in school longer and delaying entry into the job market. Another factor in the story of our declining workforce is the high number of people that have disabilities and health problems. The number of people receiving federal disability benefits increased by 77% between the year 2000 and 2013. Now, look at this chart and you see the percentages of the urban versus rural population who have disabilities. And then there are the people not able to seek paid employment because they are caring for family members at home. Many prime-age women who are not in the labor force cite this as the main reason, whether raising children or caring for elderly relatives. The National Alliance for Caregiving estimates that if these services were performed by paid persons, the value would exceed $340 billion annually. A study funded by AARP and released in mid-2025 revealed that some 63 million persons in the U.S. are now family caregivers. Today's family caregivers are younger, more diverse, and more likely to be juggling multiple roles, with nearly a third caring for both children and adults. 3 in 5 caregivers are women, and on average, caregivers are 51 years old. 6 in 10 are non-Hispanic, white, with 1 in 5 family caregivers living in rural areas. Now let's take a look at employment and unemployment. When the government announces the official rate of unemployment, this statistic is based on a survey of households taken by the U.S. Census Bureau. They report the percentage of the labor force that is without work but seeking employment. Anyone who responds that they have given up looking for employment is categorized as no longer in the workforce and therefore not unemployed. While exact 2026 figures aren't finalized, late 2025 data shows around 135.2 million full-time workers in the United States, with projections expecting slight fluctuations but generally stabilizing around that level for 2026, potentially around 133 to 134 million. Again, the effects of the administration's tariff policies are yet to be fully experienced. The official unemployment rate reported for December 2025 was 4.4%. But let's take a closer look. The NILF, the Not in the Labor Force Adjusted Unemployment Rate, provides a broader picture of labor utilization by adding certain subgroups of individuals not employed back into the calculation. These include those who may have been misclassified or have a high likelihood of re-entering the workforce. The Bureau of Labor Statistics survey indicates the rate of unemployment for persons age 18 and over in January was 3.7% for adult men and women. For whites, the rate was 3.5%, for blacks 6.2%, for Asians 3.7%, for Hispanics 4.8%, and for those still in their teens 11.8%. 5.5 million people who are unemployed are seeking employment. Across the United States, the demand for workers is, as always, uneven. The reasons for this are many, as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics for January 2026. South Dakota had the lowest rate of unemployment at 2.1%. As one would expect, the loss of employment with the federal government has raised the unemployment rate in the District of Columbia. During 2025, over 317,000 federal employees left the U.S. government due to firings, early retirements, and buyouts, with tens of thousands fired outright as part of President Trump's push for downsizing, though most separations were voluntary or through buyouts. Georgetown University Associate Professor of Government Hans Noel offered some insight into the risks involved as the Trump administration and the Republicans embark on their plan to dramatically reduce the size of the federal government. He writes, "One of the longest running conflicts in politics is about the trade-off between how much the government provides in services and how much its citizens must be taxed to pay for those services. And it is absolutely a trade-off. Many of the services we rely on are not always clear before they are restricted. Everything from road maintenance to air traffic control to food inspections are felt when they fail, but we don't notice them when they are working properly." Washington, D.C. is a unique market area. Federal layoffs have impacted the D.C. area property market by increasing housing inventory and creating downward pressure on prices, with many agents reporting more sellers and some price dips, shifting the market towards buyers, though it hasn't caused a market collapse. We'll now take a look at the energy and transportation sectors. Employment in clean energy is growing significantly, with the sector now accounting for over half of all global energy jobs as of 2026. As of late 2025, approximately 3.5 million people are employed in the clean energy sector in the United States. Take a look at the job listings here under solar, wind, hydropower, low impact, and geothermal. It should be clear that while employment opportunities in renewable energy will continue to increase and may increase rapidly, the demand for oil and natural gas is almost certain to increase rather than decrease. And here are the reasons, at least part of them. There are approximately 270 million to 275 million gasoline and flex fuel vehicles in operation. Gasoline-powered internal combustion engines account for roughly 91% to 92% of the total U.S. vehicle fleet. This includes some 94 to 98 million passenger cars. These vehicles are being reproduced daily and will continue to be produced for years to come. So this fleet of gasoline-powered automobiles and trucks will remain in operation for the foreseeable future. In 2026, the oil and gas extraction industry has experienced high demand for both technical engineering roles and hands-on field positions, driven by a resurgence in drilling activity in 2025 and new technological integrations. Employment in the Texas oil and gas sector alone reach nearly 500,000 workers in 2025. Directly related to the energy sector is the manufacturing, sales, and servicing of all of the different types of vehicles that exist. There are currently more than 266 million gasoline or diesel-powered vehicles in existence. The number of electric vehicles is projected to reach 2.32 million by 2029. Then there are the heavy construction vehicles needed for construction, mining, material handling, forestry, and landscaping. And then there's our air transportation. Each and every day, more than 45,000 flights occur across the United States, carrying around 3 million passengers. The air transport industry employs 11.6 million people directly and an additional 20.4 million people indirectly. This includes jobs for airlines, airports, air navigation services, and civil aerospace, as well as all of the employment required to provide the fuel for this industry. Well, there's a lot of discussion about the minimum wage, and in certain parts of the country, a higher minimum wage has been mandated. Across the United States, millions of people work full-time but do not earn enough to meet housing expenses and other basic living expenses. Some states have mandated a higher minimum wage for at least some workers. There are a number of concerns expressed by employers whose profit margins are already tight because of competition from lower wage and lower tax locations, domestic and foreign. The cost of living and the cost of doing business across the United States vary significantly. The Massachusetts Institute of Technology has developed what they call a living wage calculator to put the problem in perspective based on where people live. You can access the data for your state or metropolitan area by going to their site. However, MIT's analysis of the data indicates the disconnect between the cost of living and wage levels is a national problem. An analysis of the living wage, compiling geographically specific expenditure data for food, childcare, healthcare, housing, transportation, and other basic necessities, finds that the national minimum wage, $7.25 since 2009, does not provide a living wage for most American families. A typical family of 4, 2 working adults, 2 children, needs to work nearly 4 full-time minimum wage jobs, a 75-hour work week per working adult, to earn a living wage. The California legislature passed legislation in 2025 increasing the state's minimum wage to $16.90 per hour. Only the District of Columbia has a higher minimum wage at $17.95. A study undertaken by the Center on Wage and Employment Dynamics at the University of California, Berkeley, examined the impact of the higher minimum wage on small businesses, concluding the following. A minimum wage increase doesn't kill jobs. It kills job vacancies, not jobs. The higher wage makes it easier to recruit workers and retain them. Turnover rates go down. Other research shows that those workers are likely to be a little more productive as well. A word of caution is required for those who advocate for an increase in the minimum wage or even a universal basic income independent of one extremely important other need of families: decent, affordable housing. The economics is easy to understand. Increase the demand side of a market without increasing the supply side, and prices will increase. Thus, for many people whose dollar income has increased by a legislated increase in the minimum wage, the increase will eventually be, and in almost all markets has been, capitalized into higher rental charges for existing apartments and higher prices for houses suitable for first-time home buyers. To counter market forces, communities will need to commit public funds to subsidize the construction of new affordable rental housing units as well as permanently affordable properties for owner occupancy. At the same time, there are some sectors of the economy and some regions that have difficulty filling job openings. Low pay, difficult or dangerous working conditions, a shortage of decent affordable housing, and transportation obstacles all contribute to the problem. Some employers say they have great difficulty finding people with the needed skills and knowledge. Potential candidates may have undesirable criminal records or are found to be using illegal or addictive drugs. Job openings and postings are expected to track each other in 2026, with current data suggesting a period of relative stability in the U.S. labor market characterized by a low hire, low fire environment. The number of job openings is projected to stabilize rather than surge. Back in 2016, Bob Bryan of Business Insider reminded readers of the important demographic issues. He wrote, "While the outlook is bright for the younger generation, there will be a transition period as baby boomers and older members of the workforce shift out of the labor market and more millennials hit working age. This will mean the giant gap between experienced workers with the skills for the new jobs America is creating and those available in the labor pool will remain wide for a while." Take a look at this chart on labor force participation rate. In the United States, labor force participation among people aged 65 to 74 reached 27.4% in 2024, the highest level on record according to the most recent Bureau of Labor Statistics data. Earlier BLS projections estimated that participation could reach 30.2% by 2026, this year, highlighting the long-term accelerating trend of people working later in life. An investigation by ProPublica and the Urban Institute found that more than half of U.S. workers aged 50 and over are laid off or pushed out of career jobs before they choose to retire, and few ever again earn what they did before these setbacks. Seniors now comprise 42% of those employed by funeral homes and related services. They are 31% of all crossing guards and flaggers, and 30% of all school bus drivers. As the years have passed, so has the hourly compensation increased for at least some of these seniors. Well, now let's take a look at benefits paid to the unemployed. As of early January 2026, approximately 1.88 million people in the United States were receiving ongoing unemployment benefits, known as continuing claims. The number of new applications for benefits was around 198,000 for the week ending January 10, 2026. This is out of a total of around 7.5 million people who are unemployed. Today, the National Employment Law Project is committed to strengthening local democracy to ensure workers' rights, support worker organizing, and improve unemployment insurance benefits. This is certainly an ongoing political struggle. What about educational levels and unemployment? Does education matter? Well, education levels and specialized training have always helped protect people from prolonged periods of unemployment, if not necessarily from underemployment. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics for 2024 was used to prepare this graph, which validates what our intuition would conclude. There is a very strong correlation between formal education, employment stability, and income level. The statistics for 2025 are essentially the same as for 2024. As this chart shows, there is little difference in the unemployment rates for white, black, or Hispanic veterans versus non-veterans. Women veterans have a higher rate of service-connected disabilities than men, which results in higher unemployment. The National Partnership for Women and Families reported in 2023 the connection between homelessness and unemployment among veterans. About 51% of unhoused veterans have a disability, 50% have a serious mental illness, and about 70% have substance use disorders. More than 40% of unhoused veterans are people of color. Finding employment while unhoused is particularly difficult. Many jobs require a permanent address to apply. Additionally, a lack of reliable contact information and transportation, as well as lack of access to regular showers and professional clothing, can limit opportunities. Next, we'll look at household savings. Take a look at this graph for a few seconds. The average savings account balance in the United States was $62,410 in 2022, while the median balance was only $8,000. The average and median balances vary depending on age, with older generations having more savings. Individuals under 35 had an average savings of $20,535 and a median balance of $5,400. Those 55 and older save an average of $85,200 with median balances of at least $8,000. The average is obviously going to be quite higher because it balances in individuals with very high savings, whereas the median balance is indicative of those who have above that versus those who are below that. In the first quarter of 2025, personal savings amounted to 3.97% of the disposable income in the United States. The personal savings rate peaked in 2020 when U.S. households saved on average over 15% of their income. After that, it has remained between 3 and 5%. A Bank of America Institute study states that 26% of all U.S. households spend 95% or more of their income on necessities. Including in this statistic, somewhat surprisingly, are 12% of households with earnings above $100,000 a year. As one would expect, around 25% of households earning less than $50,000 are in the living paycheck to paycheck group. Another important part of the employment story is the number of adults living with some type of disability. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention reports that there are some 70 million adults with some disability in the United States. 2 in 5 adults aged 65 years and older have a disability. 1 in 4 women have a disability. As one would expect, there is a strong relationship between long-term unemployment and the number of people applying for Social Security disability benefits. The Center on Budget and Policy Priorities reports that 75 million people, 1 in every 5 U.S. residents, is currently collecting Social Security or Supplemental Security Income, that is SSI benefits. According to current 2026 projections from the Social Security Administration and recent legislative impacts, the Social Security trust funds are not expected to run out of money entirely, but they are on a path toward insolvency within the next decade. An internal audit revealed that Social Security paid out $2 billion from fraudulent disability claims approved by 44 administrative law judges between 2007 and 2014. In response, the Social Security Administration and the Justice Department created the Cooperative Disability Investigation Unit, now operating in 34 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. The SSA's Office of the Inspector General reported to Congress that between October 2017 and March 2018, their investigations of fraud resulted in 400 criminal convictions, recovering $40 million. However, after finding that only 2 out of 110,000 claims were likely fraudulent, less than 1%, in May of 2025, the SSA quietly dropped a key piece of the new policy, a mandatory 3-day hold on retirement applications. And so what's next? The bottom line for most Americans is that we are very dependent on continuous employment to make ends meet. Any interruption in employment, even for a short period, can result in indebtedness and even homelessness. So next, we will look at the role of volunteerism and unpaid labor. And we've reached the end of the third lecture.